I'm Donny Osmond. You can come out now, Marie. And this is my kid sister.
That was a great way to start a show. They introduced both of us and you come out with a dummy.
Donny and Marie Osmond put on a show for decades while secretly breaking down. It had been 11 years after their Las Vegas act, and by 2019, they still couldn't even pose for pictures together. Separate from the promotional materials, meet and greets took place. The lawsuit that tore America's most renowned brother and sister combo apart, exposing claims of greed, deception, and treachery, went unnoticed by the public. Learn how two of America's favorite siblings ended up on opposite sides of a gulf. Marie Osmond came into this world in Ogden, Utah on October 13, 1959. She came from a large family of guys and was the only female out of 9 siblings. Marie, on the other hand, had a unique childhood. Her mother took her in while the lads were at rehearsal and performance. As a regular component of existence, music was never truly absent. Marie claimed in the past that she couldn't recall a moment of her youth when there wasn't music in some kind. The melody poured in even though she hadn't performed yet. Donny and her were inseparable. They seldom spent any time apart, and their boundless energy drove their mother insane as they played and laughed. It all started with a tragic twist in the Osmond narrative. Verl and Tom, the first 2 kids, had major hearing impairments at birth. George and Olive Osmond were advised by doctors not to have any more children, and even to commit the boys to a mental hospital. However, Olive declined. She had confidence in something more powerful than medical professionals. She continued to expand her family while homeschooling her sons. All 7 of the additional infants born as a result of that choice have normal hearing. The family's foray into show business was ironically spurred by Verl and Tom's hearing problems. It wasn't until 1958 that the lads began performing for the benefit of hearing aids. What started out as a basic requirement quickly expanded into something far more. George, their father, was like a drill sergeant in charge of the household. He carried the same level of discipline back from his time serving in the U.S. Army. Reveille on a trumpet would sound the morning alarm, and military-style sound-offs would signal meals. Disrespectful behavior resulted in a spanking. However, George's sternness was tempered by affection. According to Donny, those formative years were jam-packed with fun. George insisted on flawlessness in all they did, regardless of the regulations. It was imperative that every step and tone be perfect. Local church concerts were the humble beginnings of the family enterprise. When Alan began, he was just 8 years old, and Jay was just 2. Everything changed in the late 1950s when I had a fortunate experience at Disneyland. The lads quickly received an invitation to perform on national television after they were seen singing on Main Street. Little Donny made his debut singing "You Are My Sunshine" at barely 5 years of age when they joined the Andy Williams Show. Their rapid ascent to fame was not without sacrifice. As a youngster, I spent more time in rehearsals and less time playing in the band. They did quite well financially. Marie risked signing with MGM Records after recording a demo of "Coat of Many Colors" by Dolly Parton when she was 13 years old. In her first session, she recorded 9 songs after flying to Nashville. She stunned everyone with her dedication and readiness. She embarked on her solo career at this point. "Paper Roses" was released in 1973, at the tender age of 14. It topped the country chart in the US, peaked at number 5 on Pop, and reached number 2 in the UK in no time at all. She broke the record for youngest female country singer to have a number 1 debut in the US with her single. She wasn't a one-hit wonder, though, because her album went on to dominate the country music charts. After that, Marie released 2 more popular songs, "Who's Sorry Now?" and "In My Little Corner of the World." Then the duet period began. Their successful duet, "I'm Leaving It All Up to You," was the first of many recordings that she and Donny recorded together. "Deep Purple" and "Morning Side of the Mountain" were anthems that kept them topping the charts. It was at Donny's 12-year-old recording of One Bad Apple when everything came together. He began to think more like a musician and less like a robot when he quit singing. He now felt the lines rather than merely reciting them. With just that one adjustment, he may go from being an endearing little performer to a serious artist. And then the mayhem started. Donny was a complete adolescent idol by the early 1970s when he had already achieved fame. Osmond mania was particularly devastating in the UK. At every place he went, girls would crowd the house, yell his name, and even run after his car. The crush of admirers was so great that Donny even ducked under a table at a restaurant to avoid being crushed. The Osmonds had no less than 13 singles that reached the UK top 40 in 1973. It was mass panic, not hype. The music at his concerts was overpowered by the screaming audience. He recalled a particular performance in Nashville, where the raucous from the audience seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. He was the talk of teen publications. From Tiger Beat to 16, his face was all over the place. While the girls loved him, his brothers hated him. The combination of love and hatred had an impact on Donny's life that went unnoticed by others. His adoring followers let out squeals of joy, but his detractors honed their criticisms. Donny was born on the worst day in rock history, according to Rolling Stone magazine, when he was only 15 years old. This was one of the most devastating reviews in music history. There was no way that escaped his memory. He was only a young man trying to find his identity when all of a sudden, the world's most prominent music magazine was questioning his basic existence. It broke his heart. He went on to describe it as the most severe kind of bullying. That was only the beginning. He rose to fame in the 1980s as a musical industry joke. It was necessary to remove guitarist Phil Collins' name from the credits of Donny's record due to the fact that no one wanted to be associated with him. Newspapers continued to trash him the day after sold-out concerts. The difference between the two times of day, when they were celebrating and when they were insulting, caused lasting wounds. The toll, however, was not only psychological, it soon became bodily as well. A supporter attacked Donny when he entered a Manchester hotel one evening. With a pen and an autograph book in her hand, she charged him with all her might. She was innocent. All she wanted was to spend time with her idol. But the pen stabbed him in the eye as she embraced him. At that very moment, a flash from a camera went off. The intense beam of light scorched his already injured retina and caused irreversible damage to his eye. He was on the verge of blindness. Even now, it lingers in Donny's mind, as a constant reminder that celebrity can transform from love to danger in an instant. The scar remains. "She didn't know," he remarked, displaying compassion rather than criticizing the girl. All she felt was overwhelming. On the other hand, Marie had her own difficult road. Donny and Marie catapulted her to fame at the tender age of 15. However, a very darker event was taking on behind the cheerful acts and flashing lights. The studio's management was harsh, not to mention overly rigorous. Marie weighed a scant 103 pounds to begin with. However, her weight was deemed excessive. They hauled her out to a parking lot one day and made her a horrible choice. Either lose 10 pounds, or the program will be cancelled. That was only the beginning. Their constant criticism and insinuation that she was a burden on her family and should cease stuffing food into her fat face was more than simply criticism. It tormented her mental health. Marie started starving herself because she was so determined to maintain her work. In order to maintain a weight of less than 93 pounds, she would sometimes go 3 days without eating before filming, and on other occasions, she would drink lemon water combined with cayenne pepper and maple syrup. It posed no health risks and was completely unsafe. But she was ensnared. Years passed as she carried that burden. After attempting every diet plan she could discover, she would go through another round of yo-yo dieting. Decades passed before she came to terms with her ordeal. The treatment was abusive, not merely coercive. Plus, it caused serious wounds. However, that wasn't the sole traumatic experience she bore. Marie had another dark secret she kept hidden for a long time before she became famous. She had been sexually molested by individuals her parents trusted when she was only 8 or 9 years old. She had a new perspective on men after enduring such severe assault. They irritated her stomach. She had no faith in them. Being in their presence was completely foreign to her. Because of all the uncertainty, she began to doubt her own identity. The assault had shattered her capacity to comprehend her emotions, so she began to wonder whether she may be gay, not out of desire, but because. Marie discussed this in her memoirs and subsequently on The Talk. She was finally prepared to tell the truth, but her voice quivered as she spoke. Recuperation required some time. Even though her family was not the source of the abuse, she was able to regain trust with the support of her father, brothers, and uncles. She learned from them that not all males are aggressive and nasty. She began to rebuild, little by little. She continued to seek love despite all that suffering. She dated the youngest Bee Gees sibling, Andy Gibb, when she was a young star. He has charisma and talent, but his drug use became problematic. Marie felt powerless as she saw his health deteriorate. Eventually, she had no choice but to leave. She was devastated. She later came clean about her relationship with Chips actor Eric Estrada. Marital bliss was also short-lived, though she avoided discussing it. Their 1982 marriage to Steve Craig was short-lived. The couple filed for a divorce 3 years later. Brian Blossel, a music producer, was her husband from 1986 to 1986. Despite the difficulties in their relationship, they managed to have 7 children together. They split up in 1998 while she was suffering from postpartum depression, and they were legally divorced by 2007. Marie, in hindsight, acknowledged that she had entered the relationship too quickly without having a complete grasp of who she was. Unexpectedly, she reconciled with her first husband, Steve Craig, after they had been separated for decades. Everything was different this time. Despite their differences, they were able to work things out. Donny and Marie recorded a cover of I'm Leaving It All Up to You in 1974. The song wasn't original, but they gave it a fresh sound. The gentle country pop tune swiftly rose through the ranks, eventually peaking at number 1 on the Adult Contemporary and number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. Along with Umbrella Song, that record proved the catalyst for the singer's meteoric rise to fame on television. Nobody could deny the obvious connection between them. A week-long guest hosting gig on The Mike Douglas Show was theirs in 1975. As luck would have it, ABC TV president Fred Silverman was watching. Something new, endearing, and suitable for families was what drew his attention to them. He dared to offer the adolescent couple their own primetime variety program. Donny was just 18 years old, and Marie was barely 16. There had never been a variety show host so youthful. The move was daring, but effective. Donny and Marie had weekly viewership of almost 14 million when it first aired in January 1976. Originally shot in Los Angeles, the show soon relocated to the Utah studio of the Osmond family after becoming an instant sensation. After fighting for more creative authority, they made that move. On screen, they were victorious, but the reality was far less spectacular. As a teenager, Marie was subjected to tremendous pressure to conform to societal standards of beauty. Producers berated her weight on a regular basis, claiming that it was an embarrassment, and threatened to fire other members of the cast and crew unless she lost weight. As a result of the pressure from one producer who insisted he was only attempting to assist her with her poor eating habits, she would occasionally go days without food and would instead drink a mixture of water, lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup. She became so dizzy that she struggled to complete the dancing routines. Standing next to glitzy guest stars made her feel like the ugly duckling, as she put it herself. Despite the show's success with viewers, the family's financial situation was quietly deteriorating. Years down the road, Jimmy Osmond came clean about the $80 to $100 million they had lost due to poor financial choices. Their trustworthy advisors botched the entire operation. They had hoped that by combining their resources, the family would be safer, but instead, they were almost wiped out. Despite George's best efforts, many of the company ventures he invested in failed, leaving them without a stable financial future. Real estate was the sole asset that prevented their complete collapse. George had ensured that they had some property, and when everything else failed, they were able to pay off their obligations by selling it. Something far more intimate, Donny's romantic life, was the last straw. It took him 3 years to announce his marriage to Debbie Glenn, which took place on May 8, 1978. Donny became the ideal date for adolescent females all across the globe, and he was well aware of the damage it would cause to his reputation. Their fixation began to wane as they learned he was married. The ratings fell. To save the show, producers trimmed popular parts, added disco music, and rebranded it as the Osmond Family Show. Yet, the enchantment had faded. It was the network, not the siblings, that chose to cancel the show in May 1979. Donny Osmond's career practically collapsed the moment their variety show ended. Suddenly, his music was unpopular, despite his status as one of the world's top adolescent idols. Record labels weren't interested, and radio stations paid him little mind. By 1978, he had surpassed Michael Jackson in the number of top 40 hits, but it was meaningless. Afterwards, Donny acknowledged that he felt trapped by his own image as a teenager, unable to escape the perception that he was uncool. He carried that weight about with him. Midway through the 1990s, the tension evolved into a more sinister form: debilitating panic episodes. Social anxiety disorder was finally determined to be his diagnosis. Before stepping onto the stage, he admitted there were times he would have preferred death over performing. Once, while he was trembling violently in bed, his wife Debbie took him to the emergency room in a flash. It was all witnessed by Marie, his sister. Marie recalled how in the 1970s, Donny would sit alone in his dressing room, fighting for his own survival. Regardless, he persisted. Donny has more than 2,000 performances in North America in the title role in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat between 1992 and 1998. Joan Collins and Richard Attenborough were even cast in the 1999 film adaptation. Although the job brought new life to his career, it also tested his anxiousness to its breaking point. Having to perform night after night was really stressful. Even when he was too ill to stand, Donny once continued performing at a Las Vegas engagement. He passed out just as the curtain came down, and the stagehands had to help him off. The lack of protection provided by his costume, along with his frequent performances beside youngsters, greatly increased his susceptibility to sickness. Talking to director Stephen Pimlott was the one thing that helped him change his perspective. The concept that Pimlott had given Donny, "The theater is a place where people come to dream in public, and you are in charge of that dream," was a glimmer of hope. Instead of Joseph, he'll be playing Pharaoh on his December 2024 theatrical comeback. Marie was stealthily reviving herself, while Donny attempted to restore. She also had difficulty when their concert finished, but she went back to country music in the middle of the 1980s. That was the right choice. Capitol Records signed her and put her in touch with Dan Seals, thanks to a Nashville executive called Jim Fogelsong. Their duet, "Meet Me in Montana," reached #1 in the US and made it into Canada's top 20. The CMA Award for Vocal Duo of the Year went to them as well. The following week, another smash song, There's No Stopping Your Heart, arrived. She made a triumphant return with that record. Her subsequent album, I Only Wanted You, topped the country charts for 37 weeks and featured the top 5 hit Read My Lips, as well as another Paul Davis duet, You're Still New to Me, which reached #1. ACM Top Female Vocalist and Grammy duet with Dan Seals nominations were also bestowed to Marie as a result of her comeback. She had returned, and this time she was at the head of the pack. The legendary TV broadcaster Dick Clark had an idea in 1998. He wanted Donny and Marie to lead daytime chat shows again. They were both wary since doing so may reenact the same image from which they had battled so hard to break free. Nonetheless, they reached a consensus. September 1998 saw the premiere of the revamped Donny and Marie show. It featured a live house band, famous producers, and a lot of excitement, but the numbers didn't reflect that. Daytime Emmy nominations were received by the siblings in 2000 and 2001. However, the program was canceled after only 2 seasons. It was their second pitiful effort to reawaken the magic of the 1970s. It was not all bad, though. A decade down the road, Donny and Marie started a 6-week residency at the Flamingo in Las Vegas. The original plan called for a shorter duration, but it ended up lasting 11 years until 2019. It turned out to be a very fruitful phase in their careers. In the late 1980s, as Marie's singing career began to decline once more, she discovered a new love: dolls. Since a child, she found solace in dolls, since she had to contend with 8 brothers. It was important for Marie's mother Olive that she have her own space. Marie accumulated over 700 dolls from different countries by the 1990s. After that, the LL Nantra Company approached me about selling their dolls on QVC. Marie was on board, but she wanted to be engaged 100%. Not believing in anything made her not want to put her name on it. The choice was profitable. Nearly 200 dolls were designed with her assistance. She and her husband rebranded the firm Marion after purchasing it due to its success. The Olive May doll, which Marie created and named after her mother, was one of her most beloved works of art. Marie kept it in Olive's curio cabinet until her death, and then she presented it to Sarah Elizabeth, Olive's niece, and a nurse who had cared for her in her last year. Nothing was impersonal about it, it was deeply intimate. With her infectious smile, boundless energy, and constant companionship with her brother Donny, Marie Osmond exuded an aura of power that was hard to resist. Behind that front, though, was a lady who was carrying more sorrow than anybody could possibly fathom. Marie had a severe case of depression after the 1999 birth of her 7th child, Matthew. She had relocated her family to Los Angeles, was 40 years old, and her talk show had recently been renewed. Despite how wonderful it all appeared, she was actually crumbling on the inside. When she finally snapped, she left her kid in the care of the nanny and traveled 250 miles up the coast to a motel. In her state of isolation and terror, she came to comprehend the thoughts that may lead someone to contemplate suicide. For many, that was the first step on the path to postpartum depression. The first stride toward recovery came when her mother unexpectedly admitted that she too had experienced it. Despite Marie's best efforts to conceal it for 5 months, the condition persisted. Getting healthier required bravery and assistance. Her world crumbled once more a little over 10 years later. Her son Michael, who was 18 years old at the time of his suicide, jumped from the 8th story of his condominium in Los Angeles in 2010. He was depressed and had changed his surname to Brian. This was particularly true following Marie's 2007 divorce from Brian Blossel. Michael had tried and failed at rehabilitation. In his last conversation with Marie, he expressed his loneliness and lack of social support. She had promised to be there on Monday, but sadness had no mercy. Future toxicology results came back negative for narcotics and alcohol. He had been clean and, as Marie would later disclose, was the target of bullying as a result. She kept silent about who wronged him. The sorrow washed over her, and it still does. Critics berated her for returning to work so soon after Michael's death. She was said to be cold-hearted by those around her. Still, Marie had her rationale. They couldn't all perish with Michael, she said, so she had to demonstrate to her other children how to live. It was difficult. "We choose life," she informed her children, even though they refused to attend school. That is what Mike would have wanted. It was only the beginning of the reaction. When Marie's daughter Jessica wed in 2019, many made fun of her for standing by her. Despite the opposition, Marie remained steadfast. No one deserves to be shamed, especially a parent who loves their child. Marie persevered through the agony. She and Donny signed a brief 6-week residency in Las Vegas in 2008. For 11 years, it continued. Their combined 1,130 performances attracted approximately 1 million spectators. They became the longest-running act of their type on the Strip with their residency. They were so honored that the Flamingo showroom was renamed after them in 2013. But behind the scenes, there was a tremendous amount of labor. Marie continued performing after hurting her knee on stage despite wearing a brace. She crawled up the stairs at home after rehearsals because her muscles hurt so horribly. She made a live TV joke about Donny being 61 years old, but they were both really feeling the effects of the physical toll. Off stage, their lives were far apart, despite how close they appeared on stage. After Michael passed away, Marie, a single mother of 8, needed structure, and Las Vegas provided it. Donny had his own crew and dressing room so he could concentrate on other tasks. They became the subject of quarrel rumors, but Marie dismissed them with a chuckle. "Because we are siblings, we argue daily." But things were still tense. Marie leaned more toward country music, while Donny focused on pop and theater. This allowed them to showcase their own talents. There were lengthy rehearsals, and artistic disputes surfaced frequently. The show, however, continued to expand. The 6-week agreement became 11 years long due to the very high demand and excellent financial terms. Ticket prices for their last performances reached into the thousands, and their likenesses were painted all over the Flamingo building. But it becomes more difficult to cover up the fissures. In 2018, viewers discovered that the show's advertising photographs were shot independently. You could only meet Marie or Donny during the meet and greets, never both. Rumor has it that they were so quiet while not performing. A lawsuit followed. Their producers said that Donny was attempting to steal money from them and their agency. Marie was also implicated in the lawsuit, with accusations that she had remained silent while Donny was portrayed as manipulative and selfish. Things had grown so tense, and it was horrible to see. Marie attempted a new venture in 2013 when she tried hosting a discussion show on the Hallmark Channel. Only one season was enough to have it axed. She had anticipated it as her significant separation from Donny. Nonetheless, it turned out to be yet another setback during a distressing period in her life. In addition to raising their children and processing Michael's loss, she remained indebted to their Vegas performance. Some say that her unhappiness with Donny just served to exacerbate their relationship. They made an effort to make things lighthearted when they ultimately revealed their residency was ending in 2019. "We're just moving on to solo projects." Reports surfaced in early 2023 stating that Marie had reportedly refused to perform with Donny again. Marie replied, "I'll see you at Christmas." However, the farewell seemed more like the conclusion of something more than just a goodbye to a show. It was accompanied by hugs and tears during their last performance. Loss, strain, heartache, and public scrutiny are all things that Marie Osmond has experienced. Not because it was simple, but because she believed in making her own choices in life. She kept coming back. To the stage, to her kids, to the spotlight. Time and time again.